Good evening and good day. Welcome to the U.S. Trade and Development Agency's Thailand Railway Modernization Virtual Roundtable. My name is Pam Pasu from the Tuatara Group. Our team is supporting USTDA in the organization of this event. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items though. First, there will be simultaneous interpretation in English and Thai during this roundtable. You may select the language in which you would like to listen to the program by selecting Thai or English near the interpretation globe at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Second, we will be taking questions during the presentation segment of our program and during the discussion after the break. Please submit your questions with your name and company, please, via the question and answer feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, not the chat. We do hope you found the advanced materials helpful. If you did not receive them, please email me or put your request in the Q&A function of your Zoom screen, and I'll make sure you receive the link. The event is being recorded, and we will be sending out a recording at the end of the webinar. Now I'd like to welcome Kevin Tours, USTDA's Country Manager for the Indo-Pacific region, to kick off the roundtable. Kevin?
Good morning and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the USTDA Thailand Railway Modernization Virtual Roundtable. This meeting brings together US and Thai rail sector stakeholders to discuss upcoming projects and opportunities in Thailand's rail sector, as well as potential strategies and best practices to support rail sector modernization. We are excited by the interest and participation from the many US rail sector companies and organizations represented here today, as well as our Thai rail sector colleagues, including representatives from the Ministry of Transport, the State Railway of Thailand, the Department of Rail Transport, and the Office of Transport and Traffic Policy and Planning. Today's event is meant to be interactive and engaging, and so we welcome your questions for the speakers, which we will attempt to address over the course of today's session. Again, questions can be submitted via the Q&A function on your screen. We have a very full agenda for you today and a lot of content to get through, so I think we should get started. It is my pleasure to introduce our opening speaker, USTDA's Acting Director, N.O.T. Abang. Ms. Abang was appointed by President Biden to serve as USTDA's Acting Director in February of this year. Her appointment meant a return to USTDA, where from 2004 to 2019, she served in a variety of leadership roles at the agency, first as the Agent General Counsel, and subsequently as Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer. Prior to her return to USTDA, Ms. Abang served as the Head of Strategic Partnerships at the Milken Center for Advancing the American Dream, where she drove the development of strategic partnerships to expand access to education, health, financial empowerment, and entrepreneurship. It is my pleasure to welcome to the stage USTDA's Acting Director, N.O. Abang.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for that kind introduction. Good morning to our participants in Thailand, and good evening to all of you in the United States. On behalf of the US Trade and Development Agency, I am delighted to welcome you to this Thailand Railway Modernization Virtual Roundtable. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to the Ministry of Transport and to the State Railway of Thailand for partnering with us on this event. I also wish to extend a special thanks to Deputy Permanent Secretary Sorapong Paitumpong of the Ministry of Transport for his participation today, to Dr. Pichette, Deputy Director General of the Department of Rail Transport, Dr. Attapon, Superintending Engineer of SRT's Special Project and Construction Department, and of course, all of the Thai government and US industry participants joining us today. I'd like to start by telling you just a bit about USTDA. We are the Overseas Project Preparation Agency of the US government, and we help to plan quality infrastructure in emerging markets. At the same time, we help companies create US jobs through the export of goods and services to these projects. This dual mission of supporting overseas development and US exports makes us truly unique, and we fulfill our mission by providing grant-based funding for technical assistance, feasibility studies, and pilot projects that help infrastructure projects move from concept to financing and implementation. We engage early. We want to help our partners define the technology and design options for their projects at an early stage. USTDA also supports partnership building events like today's Roundtable that connects overseas project sponsors to US companies, technologies, and expertise that can bring solutions to the infrastructure goals that our partners have set. Our approach towards infrastructure development involves building lasting partnerships, including partnerships involving public and private sector leaders from the United States and Thailand. And we focus on what our partners identify as their priorities. That is why, if you look at our portfolio in Thailand and across Southeast Asia for that matter, it contains some of the region's highest priority infrastructure projects in the transportation, energy, and information and communications technology sectors. Our overseas partners approach USTDA because they want to gain access to the best technical expertise possible. And that is exactly what we provide, as you will hear from the experts who are with us today. As we will learn in greater detail during today's presentations, Thailand is undertaking an ambitious and impressive plan to invest in its rail infrastructure. These investments are important because they will have a positive impact on the daily lives of the Thai people. Improvements to the passenger and freight networks will transform how people and goods are transported across the country. Expanded rail use means fewer trucks and passenger vehicles on the road. This means less congested highways, greater energy efficiency in Thailand's transportation sector, and cleaner air. Simply put, these investments in Thailand's rail infrastructure will be good for business, good for people, and good for the environment. I'd like to highlight that last point in particular. Last month, during the Leaders Summit on Climate, in what was a high point for our agency, President Biden launched a new USTDA initiative called the Global Partnership for Climate Smart Infrastructure. Under this initiative, USTDA is bringing together US industry and US government partners to support the development of climate smart infrastructure in projects in the energy and transportation sectors. In describing the initiative, the president stated that these sorts of partnerships are going to be good for all of us, US and overseas stakeholders alike, because as we support the development of new, clean infrastructure in our partner countries, we will also create good-paying jobs in the United States. From today's roundtable, I look forward to hearing new ideas for collaboration between the American and Thai rail sectors. And I look forward to expanding USTDA's role in creating new partnerships that will be good for all of us. I do think that an important part of partnering is being able to meet face-to-face with your partners from time to time. To that end, once it is safe for all of us to travel again, USTDA will be happy to host a reverse trade mission to the United States for Thailand's rail sector leaders. This visit will allow the sharing of ideas for industry best practices and solutions. When that date comes, I will extend the warmest of welcomes to our partners from SRT, the Ministry of Transport, and the other Thai rail sector stakeholders. In closing, I would like to return to President Biden's vision of American leadership that advances shared interests and mutual respect. For USTDA, our commitment to Thailand is one that embodies that vision. And it bears repeating that at the heart of this vision, the President's and mine, is a core set of values: trust, mutual respect, and collective prosperity. These will be foundational to all our work. Thank you for your participation here today, and I hope that today's session is both productive and informative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, for those remarks and for joining us here today. I would now like to welcome to the stage Sorapong Paitunpong, Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Transport. Mr. Sorapong Paitunpong has been the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Transport since October 2019. Prior to this position, he served in a variety of roles in the Ministry of Transport, including as the Director General of the Department of Rail Transport, Deputy Director General of the Department of Rail Transport, Assistant to the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Transport, and Deputy Spokesperson of the Ministry of Transport. Deputy Permanent Secretary Sorapong, we invite you to deliver your opening remarks.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ino Ibong, Acting Directors of U.S. Trade and Development Agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening in United States of America and good morning everyone in Thailand. I'm very happy to join everyone at this virtual roundtables. As I heard that this is the first time since 9 years that we haven't made this roundtable since 2012. Even at the night times in United States and this sunshine morning in Thailand, but we still continuing to collaboration together. This is the good times for both of us, and I will continue my speech in Thai, and I am sure that there will be translation to that. สำหรับการพัฒนาโครงสร้างพื้นฐานทางด้านการคมนาคม
Thailand is currently undergoing transport infrastructure development. We thank the U.S. for your interest and for your cooperation. Thank you for giving us the opportunity for development, for our sustainability, for the development of the Thai railway networks. We realize that rail transport is a mode of transportation that meets the needs with efficiency and sustainability. Today, we have developed our rail systems both within the city and intercity, especially the development of our intercity metro system. Thailand is the mainland center of ASEAN. We have to use our geographical potential as a transport hub to efficiently connect passengers and goods with our neighboring countries, the Mekong regionals, and other countries that Thailand are friends with. Our government has expedited double-track railway projects, which is considered unprecedented. This is called double-track railway projects. This was considered unprecedented in the last 124 years. We have constructed, we have built 2 high-speed rail projects, and 14 other projects are coming. The government see that we should connect with our neighboring countries in ASEAN and the GMS group.
ในเรื่องของการสร้างศูนย์กลางการคมนาคมขนส่งทางราง
We have developed
สถานีกลางบางซื่อซึ่งจะได้เชื่อมต่อไปยัง ภาคตะวันออกเฉียงเหนือ
the hub, which is called the Bangsu Grand Station, which will connect to the northeastern region of the country and to other countries as well.
ในส่วนของไทยที่ผ่านมาไม่ใช่เพียงการพัฒนาในเชิงของโครงสร้างพื้นฐาน
So in terms of the development,
ความร่วมมือทั้งในเรื่องของ
not just the infrastructure development, we have to develop the technology management
การพัฒนาองค์กร
and knowledge
การพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืน
to correspond with the infrastructure development as well.
สำหรับในช่วงเวลาที่ผ่านมาผมขอเรียนให้ทราบว่า
I would like to say that we have
ขนาด1 เมตร
developed 1 meter of the double rail projects. We have about 4,400 kilometers networks. And before we had about 9% of the transit rail system. But since General Prayut Chan-o-cha became the Prime Minister, we hope that we could go from 9% to 25% of the entire system. We would like, we are also doing the rapid transit networks. The first system is to connect to the eastern part of the country, which is the main economies of Thailand. We have opened for the private sector to be involved in this system. For another project, we have partnered with the Chinese government, which is the high-speed rail from Nong Khai through, which is in the northeastern through the south. Both, we are talking about over 600 kilometers on both projects. For Bangkok, we have expedited the metro system from 2 projects 7 years ago. Now we have over 6 projects. We have expedited from 86 kilometers of rapid transit system. Now we have 170 kilometers of rapid transit networks. We also hope to be the top 5 of the world's rail transport metropolis in the next 7 years, which means that Thailand will develop the metro system that is over 525 kilometers.
ดังที่ผมได้กล่าวมาแล้วสิ่งที่เราต้องการความร่วมมือกับมิตรประเทศอย่างเช่นสหรัฐอเมริกาซึ่งมีความสัมพันธ์อัน
So
ยาวนาน
what Thailand needs is cooperation from longtime friends like the US is that
รวมถึงการพัฒนาในเชิงของการต่อ
the
ยอด
technology exchange and knowledge that is built on development that will lead to the sustainable development of Thailand, to reduce imports of main materials in the future.
พัฒนาอุตสาหกรรมทางรางในประเทศไทย
And this will
จะเป็นศูนย์กลางในการที่จะช่วยเหลือให้ความร่วมมือไปอยู่ยังประเทศเพื่อนบ้าน
and we will help our neighboring countries in development of the rail systems as well. Number 2, we want to learn about regulations, including approval process regarding safety, in order that rail system is at its safest point. Number 3 is the organizational development, so that we can reduce budget deficits, and that they are not the burden to the government in the future. I personally believe that this is the optimal time that our two countries should cooperate, which will lead to sustainability in the 3 points that I mentioned. I truly wish that this is not the last meeting, but hope that this is one and continued meetings that are coming, so we have more exchange of knowledge. I would like to mention to the director of the USTDA that we do not want to just have one meeting and then wait for another 9 years. So I really hope that from this we can build on to our future cooperation. Thank you so much, and I would like that we could have cooperation with the United States. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Permanent Secretary Sorapong, for your remarks. We greatly appreciate your participation here. And we are also very grateful for the partnership and collaboration we have with the Ministry of Transport in Thailand. So thank you again. Next, we will hear from representatives from the Ministry of Transport and the State Railway of Thailand, who will share with us background on their organization's projects and plans, some of which you heard Deputy Permanent Secretary Sorapong discuss, including ongoing and planned railway modernization projects, rolling stock procurements, rail maintenance projects, and other opportunities for US firms. Following these presentations, we will have time for questions from the audience. And so we do welcome you to submit questions during the presentations in the chat that we will attempt to address following the presentations. First, I would like to introduce our speaker from the Ministry of Transport, Dr. Pichet Kunatamarak, Deputy Director General of the Department of Rail Transport. Dr. Pichet has held a variety of roles within the Ministry of Transport, including as a senior professional engineer at the Office of Transport and Traffic Policy and Planning. He has professional experience with urban transportation planning, high-speed rail network design, and logistics management. He previously served as Director of the Rail Project Development Office and as Assistant Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Transport. Dr. Pichet, we now turn to you for your presentation.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm in Thailand. This is morning hour in Thailand. It should be night in USA at this time. To say good evening. I'm going to share with you all in 12 minutes about what we are doing right now in Thailand. First of all, I would like to share you video to you all within 4 minutes to show you video. First, after that, I will tell you in detail what's going on in Thailand.
A railway system is the safest, most cost-efficient and environmentally friendly transportation mode. However, Thai railway networks have primarily featured single-track systems and tracks have deteriorated. This has resulted in prolonged travel times as trains have to stop frequently to give way for approaching locomotives. Moreover, existing rail mass transit networks are not sufficient to effectively address traffic issues and air pollution in Bangkok. Under the helm of Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha, the government thus assigned Mr. Saksayam Chitchop, Minister of Transport, to cooperate with relevant agencies to expedite the development of rail transportation, infrastructure and services, and during the past 7 years, the following projects have been developed. Number 1. The development of rail mass transit systems in Bangkok and its vicinity. The Ministry of Transport has accelerated the construction of rail mass transit systems in Bangkok and its vicinity to facilitate public travel. 6 lines have been providing services covering a combined distance of 83.68 kilometers. 6 more lines are under construction and will cover a combined length of 131.76 kilometers. The bidding process is underway for 2 projects, which will stretch for a combined length of 37 kilometers. A study on the public-private partnership PPP approach is being conducted for another 5 projects, which will cover 55.24 kilometers. Number 2. The development of Bang Sue Grand Station. Bang Sue Grand Station is being constructed as Thailand's new railway hub and national landmark. The largest railway station in the ASEAN region, it will serve long-distance trains, high-speed trains, commuter trains, and rail mass transit systems with efficient links to other modes of transport. The station, together with the Red Line commuter train, is slated for soft opening in July 2021 and for grand opening in November 2021. Number 3. The development of double-track railways and construction of new railways. The construction of double-track railway and new railway projects has been accelerated to enhance transportation efficiency and reduce logistical costs. Currently, 2 lines with a combined length of 293 kilometers are in service. 5 projects are under construction and will cover 700 kilometers. The bidding process is underway for 2 projects that will cover 678 kilometers. Number 4. The development of the high-speed rail system. A new milestone in Thai railway affairs is the construction of Thailand's first 2 high-speed rail projects, which will bolster economic growth, expand commercial opportunities, and distribute development and income to local areas along the routes. The combined length will be 473 kilometers. In sum, the government's railway transportation development projects have cost 1,508,648 million baht. These developments reflect the commitment of the government and the Ministry of Transport to establish railway networks as the main transportation system in the country in order to reduce national logistical costs, mitigate traffic accidents, attenuate air pollution, including the PM2.5 issue, and facilitate public travel. These ventures will also propagate provincial development and economic growth potential for national security, prosperity, and a sustainable future.
This is just 4-minute video to show you like outlook what is going on in Thailand. After that, I would like to share why we need to invest in mega projects with so many budgets for rail development because we want to solve our transportation problems. Thailand has quite a lot of road and highway networks and lots of private cars during rush hour. Then we face a lot of pollution, PM2.5, and also traffic jam in Bangkok is quite severe, like 10 monsters are ranked by BBC News. Then we want investment in Bangkok to solve this problem, and the project is going on year by year. This is show what is going on the metro network in Bangkok. Yes, have 2 lines in operation. Next is Purple Line and Upper Link. The red line is opening this year. Pink and orange line are under construction. The total network will be more than 500 kilometers. We also have the Bangsi Grand Station with its major railway hub of Thailand and ASEAN. Yesterday, the Bloomberg reporter just contacted us to show what is going on in Bangsi Grand Station. The report should be public in the media, should be next week. It will be the largest railway station in Southeast Asia. Next, we would like to show you details about the intercity railway network. The project is expected to be completed in the next 3 years. Next, we would like to show an international network. We aim to link under the countries under international cooperation agreement, such as ASEAN's GMS, Belt and Road Initiative, Indo-Pacific CPTPP. Thailand is like a hub in this region. We can link our network to the other regions. The high-speed train project is estimated that we have a link from southern part of China, passing Lao PTR. In this network high-speed rail, we can divide it into sections, high-speed 1 and high-speed 2. High-speed 1 from Bangkok to Nakhon Ratchasima and Nakhon Ratchasima to Nong Khai to connected to the Lao PTR. The first phase of high-speed 1 about Bangkok to Nakhon Ratchasima 250 kilometer section. For sure, we use a Chinese technology to make sure that the technologies can connect each other. This picture shows the Fosinghouse train. The detail of Fosinghouse are maximum design speed about 250 kilometers per hour. This also shows the construction picture that are going on for the civil work right now. It is under construction phase. This line passing so many areas of the northern area. The picture shows that the civil work we do by ourselves, but for the detailed design and construction supervision, consultant and railway system, we use technology from China. The next project is high-speed train link between the 3 airports, Don Mueang, Suvarnabhumi, and Utapao Airport. This project going through the EEC region and use PPP scheme as Mr. Sorapong mentioned early in the open remark that this project, the government support for the civil work budget and private company come to join with us to investment in the railway system operation and maintenance for 50 years in the concession. The project is run through many areas like industry area, tourist destination. Do you know Pattaya? This is one of the popular places for the tourists, have the beach, sea, sand, and sun. Finally, what we are looking for the cooperation in this session, in this roundtable, we are looking for the smart station, smart infrastructure, how to make the area development, to make sure that TOD transit-oriented development nearby station will be developed, and also how we can operate this technology more than 50 years, 60 years, 70 years in the long, far future. And also we looking for the human resource development in operation and maintenance. Finally, we do hope that we have the long-term partnership with the USA technology and the partnership we try to make sure that Thailand, we are the open country. We open for the technology. We've tried to find a long-term partnership with you all. And in Thailand, we don't have any barrier. We open like a barrier free for the technology. Like in this situation, we facing problem with the COVID-19. For the vaccine, we don't mind what is technology. Sinovac, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca. It means that Thailand we quite open for any technology. This is like an example. Then we try to make this roundtable useful for us. And if you have any things that feel not feel free to contact with us, how to access to the Thai market, please contact us. And we waiting to see you all in Thailand soon when the COVID-19 is free. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pachet, for that comprehensive presentation. There are clearly a lot of projects there, and many of which you covered, and I do hope we can discuss some of those projects in more detail in the Q&A segment. Next, we will hear from our speaker from the State Railway of Thailand, Dr. Attapon Kalprasert. Dr. Attapon is Superintending Engineer within the Special Project and Construction Department of SRT. Since 2001, Dr. Attapon has held various senior engineering positions in the Permanent Way Division of SRT's Civil Engineering Department. Dr. Attapon holds a PhD in civil engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Dr. Attapon, we invite you to begin your presentation.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Ms. Ino Ibong, Acting Director, USTDA, Mr. Sorapong Paitunpong, Deputy Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Transport, and delegation from United States and Thai organizations. I'm very pleased to participate in the brief overview of rail infrastructure development projects by SRT. And actually, the contents are already covered by Dr. Pichet. So I just like to add a little bit more detail about SRT projects in my presentation. First, I'd like to talk about the structure of railway organizations in Thailand. Next slide, please. Thank you, Kevin. Okay. We are the national rail operator under the Ministry of Transport. And we are responsible for the operation of national railway for the long distance train. And we have the subsidiary company SRTET to operate the airport rail link. The main regulator is the Ministry of Transport, and we have the regulatory bodies, including the Department of Rail Transport, which direct safety and standards of railways, and also the Office of Transport and Traffic Policy and Planning, who do the overall planning of transport. For the mass transit in Bangkok, we have the Mass Rapid Transit Authority of Thailand and Bangkok Metropolitan Administration, and they are concessionaires of the MRT system in Bangkok, which is BM, the Bangkok Expressway and Metro Public Company Limited, and BTS, Bangkok Transit System Public Company Limited. For our office, next please. SRT was established more than 124 years, and actually we began rail operation earlier at the time that we are the Department of Railways. So it was more than 130 years of railway operation in Thailand. On the left, you can see my office, the Commander Building, the main office of SRT in Bangkok. And on the right is the main terminal at present. It is more than 100 years old. The Bangkok terminal, which is located in the heart of Bangkok city, is like a mimic of Frankfurt Station in Germany. And it is very unique architecture in Bangkok. For the rail network, next please. We operate the freight and passenger traffic to our neighbors, including Laos, PDR, and Malaysia. And in the future, we will connect to Cambodia. Our rail network covers 47 provinces in Thailand, and we are middle gauge railways with the route length of 4,041 kilometers. Mostly it's a single track of 84%, and double track is 10%, and triple track is 3%. This as of May last year. Right now we are building more double tracks, which I will show you in the next of my presentation. Next, please. For the rolling stock, currently we have more than 200 locomotives. The picture on the left is our new 20 tons per axle locomotive from CSR Sichuan, China. But the engine we use Caterpillar engine from the United States. The maximum speed is 120 kilometers per hour, and they are in service since 2015. Mainly, they are used to haul container trains. To the right is the new passenger coach manufactured by CNR Changchun Railway Factory in China. They are in service since 2016. We have 115 units of these coaches, which are in service in 4 routes: Bangkok to Chiang Mai in the north, Bangkok to Nong Khai in the northeast, Bangkok to Ubon Ratchathani in the northeast, and Bangkok to Hat Yai in the southern Thailand. The picture shows second class coach, and the first class is equipped with a personal screen and Wi-Fi in the coach. They are quite convenient to all passengers. Next, please. These are the main directions on rail infrastructure development in Thailand. We focus on improving existing rail network through track and bridge strengthening and rehabilitation, and we complete improving the existing rail during the previous 10 years. And at the moment, we carry out the track doubling projects, and followed by the plan to construct new lines. We aim to develop transportation facilities, including the container yards, to encourage mode shift from road to rail. And we are building new central station in Bangkok, which is Bang Sue Grand Station. Dr. Pichet has shown you the beautiful pictures of this station, which will be one of the biggest station in Southeast Asia. We plan to construct, actually we are constructing the new high-speed railway lines through the Thai and China cooperation project. We also expedite commuter rail construction project, which is the red line. I will talk in details next. For the track doubling projects, we have a total of 7 lines covering 993 kilometers ongoing right now, with worth about 124,000 million Thai baht. For these sections, we focus on the capacity constraint sections or the bottlenecks in the network. And we expedite these projects to complete within next few years. Next, I show you some pictures of the construction projects. This is the project from Lopburi to Pak Nampo in the northern line. And you can see from the top left is the elevated track structure. And to the right, we built new concrete bridges and U-turn overpass to get rid of the conflicting movement of road and rail to facilitate the traffic over the rail. And the bottom right is the new station opposite to the old one. And you can see the new platform and new track on the right of the existing track. Next, please. Next is the Makabao to Thanon Jira junction section in the northeast. This is the contract one of the northeast line. You can see the elevated track structure. In track doubling project, we provide the better alignment from the alignment, such as the widening of the curve, the elevated track, and we reduce conflicting points to eliminate the troubles at grade crossings where road and rail cross. And we follow the public requirements from local authorities. In some places, people demand the railway to be separate from the utilization of the land. So in some sections, we need to build the elevated rail stations and track. Next, please. This is the contract tree of the Northeast line, which includes 3 tunnels. This is one of the longest tunnel in Thailand, which is about 5.8 kilometers long. And this is the first tunnel in this project. It's the single track tunnel. It provides the movement of the train traffic in emergency case. So we built the twin tunnel in this case. Next. The northeastern line, this is the tunnel number 2, which is the shortest tunnel, is the double track to reduce the expenditure. And because the tunnel is quite short here, so we have this type of tunnel. Next, please. The photos of southern lines, we have some key construction features like an illustration on the top right. We plan to build the Estrados bridge. That in this case, we don't need the piers to be located in the river. So we need to build, we propose to build this type of bridge. And you can see some photos of the U-turn overpass and renovation of the station at the bottom. Next, please. Next is the phase 2 of the track doubling project, which is under review of the EAA and approval, which is cover the total of 7 lines with 266,000 million baht. Next, please. We have 2 new line construction projects, which we plan to start within late this year, and the project is already under the e-bidding process. Next, please. The high-speed rail project, Dr. Tichet has told you a little bit about this cooperation between Thai and China. We are building the standard gauge railways. For the first phase is from Bangkok to นครราชสีมา next please with a distance of about 250 kilometers the speed will be 250 kilometers per hour and this project we divided into 14 civil work contracts plus 1 E&M contract and at the moment the 7 civil contracts are ongoing and the commencement date we expect to launch the service in 2025. Next please. This is the rendition of the stations. You can see the new transportation hub, Bang Sue Grand Station from the top left to the Don Mueang Station. Ayutthaya Station is the World Heritage City. Sratburi Station, Pak Chong Station is the tourist city, and the bottom right is the Nakhon Ratchasima Station. Nakhon Ratchasima is one of the biggest cities in the northeast, and it is the gateway city to the northeast Thailand. Next is the commuter rail project, the Red Line project, and the project comprises 2 sections from Bang Sue to Rang Sit and from Bang Sue to Taling Chan. And this is one of the key projects of suburban rail development in Greater Bangkok. It is the meter gauge electrified commuter rail which will serve as a backbone of the MRT in Bangkok. We have planned to launch service in November this year. Next please. This is the picture of the EMU train set. It is the 25 kilovolt AC with the maximum speed of 160 kilometers per hour. It's the Hitachi train set which is undergone test run at the moment from March to July, and from July we will start the trial operation. In November, commercial operation will take place. Next please. Next is the rendition and the actual pictures of the Bang Sue Grand Station. It is the new transportation hub in place of old Bangkok Station. I showed you the picture earlier. It will integrate 4 main rail services, including high-speed rail, the airport railing, the long-distance train, and commuter train, which including the connection to the underground, the MRT in Bangkok. Next, please. This is the final part of my presentation. I want to show you some of the resource we have at SRT. We have moved towards mechanized track maintenance and shift from labor-intensive work to machine works for railway construction and maintenance. And this will be our direction towards the future. While network length increase as a result of infrastructure development projects like track doubling, the new lines, we need the machines for our track. And these machines include ballast regulator, tamping machine, track stabilizer, ballast cleaner, and track recording car. We operate these kind of machines right now, and in the future, we look forward to have more new machines. Next, please. We are moving towards to using technology for our track inspection and maintenance, like the milling machine to correct the minor rail defects, and ultrasonic rail floor inspection car, and multi-purpose car. The multi-purpose car can do many tasks, including GPR technology to detect the condition of the ballast and the substructure. It can cut some small trees, clean the tracks, and wash the rail. And we are in the beginning stage to start to learn to operate these machines more effectively. Next, please. The procurement plan of heavy track machines. This is the information from Civil Engineering Department. We are under the procurement process of the machines I talked about earlier. They are listed here, and also for the project under preparation is the acquisition of track recording car. Next, please. And from mechanical engineering department, they have the procurement plan of rolling stock. Now we have over 200 locomotives, but we look forward to acquire more through these projects like diesel electric locomotive supply projects of 50 units. The contract was already signed last year, and we expect to get the locomotive by 2023. We also have the lease project, which is under study. In the future development of SRT, we will consider the electrification to have more energy efficiency and reduce air pollution. So we study the supply and lease project for electric locomotive as well. For the diesel rail cars and freight cars, the BCF, bogie container flat wagons, those supply projects are under approval process. So this is my short presentation. I hope it gives some information to the interested parties in the US. And if you need any further information, you can contact me or my colleagues at SRT. You can do it by email as well, and I will be very happy to help you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Attapone, for your presentation. You have clearly left us with a lot to consider. And this is really a good point to jump into our Q&A portion of the discussion. We do have about a little less than 10 minutes for questions for Dr. Pachette and Dr. Attapone from the audience. I would again invite audience members to type any questions for our speakers in the Q&A function on your Zoom screen. We will do our best to move through as many questions as possible. And we may also have opportunities to address questions in the next segment of our event. With that, I would like to start with a first question for you, Dr. Attapone. This question comes to us from Matt London of Amstead Rail. And Amstead Rail is asking specifically about the procurement of the 965 freight car units noted in your presentation, I think towards the later end of your presentation. The question for you, Dr. Attapone, is SRT planning to publish a tender for those wagons? And a second part of that question on financing, is SRT considering rail car leasing as a potential financing option to modernize its wagon fleet? Or how would those units be financed?
Okay, to under this question about the freight cars, this is the bogie container flat wagons supply project from the mechanical engineering department. And the status of this project is under the consideration of the State Railway of Thailand and the Board of Commissioner. And we are considering to purchase the new BCF, but there are some ideas that we consider the lease option as well, according to my understanding. So the stage of this project is still under consideration of the State Railway of Thailand, and when it is approved, we will publish the tender document to our procurement website. And for the financing scheme, mostly for the rolling stock acquisition project, we will ask for the budget approval from the government. And actually for the freight cars acquisition, we have the examples in some case where the parties want to use their own freight cars. That is possible, but it will subject to the inspection and check by the mechanical engineering department of SRT, and we require our trained driver to operate the rolling stock. I hope this information answer your question.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Pichette, I'd like to go to you with a next question. One of the areas you highlighted in your presentation, an opportunity for collaboration, was smart stations and smart infrastructure. I was hoping you could maybe tell us a little bit more about how you see smart infrastructure playing a role to Thailand, including with the Bangsu station and the Bangsu Smart City.
As I mentioned at the first session, that we are looking for smart station and smart infrastructure, but what is mean of this smart concept? Smart is we're looking for how we can operate our infrastructure to make sure that it's efficient for the life cycle cost, to make sure that what is going on for the operation and maintenance this infrastructure in railway development, it will be effective and can reflect to the life cycle cost efficiencies. For the smart station is for sure, as you know, in the structure of the development, and on the best example in Japan, in Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka, for sure, they can development area nearby station, make the commercial area, how to raise fund for the nearby stay, and to make sure the passenger can use that system within the commercial together. And for sure, in USA also, the concept of TOD is come from USA of the world. Then we try to find the partnership to working with us that how to develop inside Bangsu Grand Station, nearby metro station, in Bangkok, and also other cities. It can in the long term, not just for the passenger, for the freight station also. The next session in the roundtable, I will show you what's going on, how to make a deal with the freight cargo carrier, how to carry the container, how to deal with the freight operation in the next session, in the roundtable session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pichette. I did want to turn back to Dr. Attapon for a question regarding SRT's locomotive fleet in particular. And there was a question from the audience regarding the movement to electric locomotives in the future. I was hoping you could maybe comment further on the transition to electric locomotives, including any potential timelines or expected quantities. And also if you could comment on plans and timelines for electrification of rail routes.
Okay, I have a little information in response to this question. And as you heard from my presentation, I talked about the Red Line project. So the red line project is the electrified line, and we have the long distance train to operate on this line as well. So we are considering to acquire the hybrid or the new train set to operate at the first stage. So to reduce the air pollution in Bangkok city. So there's a plan to acquire this new train set, and the plan to do the electrification is under the study, and we will develop those into phases from Bangkok to outer city, and those phases will be the extension of the red line as well in future. So we have some detail about this, and I can gather some more information from my colleague of rolling stock department to add more into detail later to address this question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're happy to help facilitate that transfer of any additional information you might be able to share on that topic too.
Yes, please.
There are opportunities for follow up. One last question we have time for. Again, we will have time for additional audience questions in the second portion of our event. But one additional question from the audience, which is, will there be opportunities for maintenance of way equipment, including excavators, movement of vegetation or debris? Is there a need for procurements of these type of machinery?
Sorry, the question is about the acquisition of the machine to do the debris and vegetation.
That's correct. The question is referring to maintenance of way equipment.
Okay, for the maintenance of way equipment is shown in my slide. We have several of the machines under the procurement process, but for the multi-purpose function car, we have only one, and we are in the process of learning and utilizing it properly. So for that car, we don't have the plan to acquire more of that type yet. But for the other type of track machines, yes, we have the plan to procure and to acquire more, like I presented in my slides. For the debris and vegetation control, apart from the machine, we also do it by labor intensive and use some smaller machines to get rid of small trees and vegetation alongside of the track regularly. And so we do it by that way also.
Thank you, Dr. Attapon, and thank you, Dr. Pichet, for your answers to those questions, and thank you too for your presentations. That is all the time we have for questions in this portion of the event. As I mentioned, we will have time for questions, and there are a few additional questions which we might like to get to in the panel discussion portion of today's event, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will have a 5-minute break, and when we come back, we will start our roundtable discussion with our Thai rail sector representatives and our US rail sector experts to further dig into some of these questions and issues that have been raised in the first portion of the event. That segment will be moderated by Doug Schuster from the Tuatara Group. Again, we will have a 5-minute break and we'll return for our roundtable portion.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good morning and evening, everyone. I'm Doug Schuster with the Tuatara Group, and I have the pleasure of moderating the next roundtable discussion on the topic of technologies, business models, financing options, and best practices that drive successful rail modernization. We've invited some leading U.S. railway experts to join the roundtable and share their perspectives and discuss these issues with our distinguished Thai presenters that you've heard from earlier. And first, I'd like to introduce all of the roundtable participants and then give them a chance to offer some introductory remarks. We have David Burns, who's a railroad industrial engineering consultant with 40 years experience working with 46 national railway systems around the world. He's also our technical expert working with us for this webinar and for the reverse trade mission when that happens. Jim Blaze is a commercial railway economist and a columnist with the Railway Age publication, and he has more than 40 years of domestic and international rail engineering and operations experience. Dr. Joe Paliz has 30 years global experience in rail track component degradation analysis and maintenance planning using multi-platform inspection data. And Michael Iden is a railroad and locomotive consultant and was previously employed by 3 U.S. railroads, including as General Director for Car and Locomotive Engineering at Union Pacific Railroad and with the U.S. locomotive manufacturer. And of course, we have our distinguished Thai participants, Dr. Pishet Kunatamrak, the Deputy General Director, Director General with the Department of Rail Transport at the Ministry of Transport, and Dr. Attapon Kauprasert, Superintending Engineer at the Construction Center in the Special Project and Construction Department at the State Railway of Thailand. So we've asked each participant to offer some brief introductory remarks, after which we'll discuss the issues together, and hopefully we'll have some time for some questions and answers as well. And we will welcome questions in the question function of Zoom. If we're not able to get to them here, we will get to them at some point after the webinar. So with that, I would like to turn it over to David Burns for your introductory remarks. David?
Good morning. Work with the railway. There are many geographical, population, and historical differences between the Thailand and the United States and their respective railways. But the most significant difference is that the US railroads are privately owned. Being privately owned, and with the threat of bankruptcy it is faced, railroads were pushed into promoting their or developing their technology. As an example, with no preparation, in 1964, they started buying wagons with 40% higher axle loads. They improving labor efficiency by 66% since the 1960s. And now we have 1 employee per kilometer of route kilometer. As an illustration, when I worked for pushing the technology, when I worked for a Class 1 railroad, I was often told to find a better and lower cost method of maintaining locomotives or your job will not exist in the near future. Railroads realized that they needed to be part of the shipper's manufacturing process. To do this, they have gone from 5 types of general purpose freight cars or wagons to now they have around 240 specially designed for the shipper's needs. They developed intermodal, And double stack container trains, which you probably all have heard of, are 40% lower in capital and operating costs, which makes them very competitive to highway. We have also developed transloading facilities, taking advantage of the fact the railway wagon has a volume and weight capacity of approximately 4 to 5 highway trucks. Low density branch lines have been sold or leased and are now operated by small companies. These short lines, as they are known as retail railways, offering low cost, personalized service. They're very efficient with less than 0.3 employees per route kilometer. The Thai railway system can benefit from the technology and management that has not only enabled the US railroads to survive without massive government assistance, but they're also very profitable. With respect to passenger rail, there are now nationally 62 urban railway systems and 7 more under construction. You mentioned earlier that America was one of the first to do transit-oriented development, and one of the best examples of this actually is in Washington. But the reason they were built was not because it was transit-oriented, it was because the federal government passed a law you couldn't build an apartment building higher than the Capitol. So they started building apartments and living accommodation and other developments around the train stations, the transit stations. Some of the technology specifically developed for freight is now being used on urban transport, particularly with condition-based maintenance. With very few restrictions, low-cost fuel, and the lack of highway tolling, high-speed intercity train has been determined to be very difficult to justify in the United States. But intercity train frequency is currently considered the most important is considered more important than a high speed. Because the reason being, not everybody wants to go at the same time. If you want to go between two cities or use the intercity train, you want a variety of times because the time you have to wait for the train is included in your transit time.
Thanks, David. Maybe you can wrap it up.
That's it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, David. So now I'll turn it over to Jim Blaze for your introductory comments. Jim? Jim is muted.
Helps to unmute, right?
You're good, Jim.
All right. So good evening and good morning. As David had pointed out, the United States has 2 different kinds of system. The passenger network and the freight network, they often serve the same track, but they're 2 entirely businesses. I'm an economist. I have an engineering background, but I'm not a licensed engineer. And my life has been spent basically helping people and companies try to figure out, well, how do you cover your capital cost? How do you cover your operating costs? And what's the market I really want to go after? And so what I really want to talk to you about is that in the US, the thing that we have most to offer to you in Thailand or to people in Mongolia or Nigeria or other places where I've been is we have the business model. Basically, it's a way of looking at what the market will bear, what our capital cost structure would be, and what our income statement and our expense side is going to be, and where can we make a profit as long as we're private. In the public sector, if you're running transit systems, the name of the goal is to minimize the operating loss. We've been extremely successful at that, and at both minimizing costs for passenger services, and as David had pointed out earlier, minimizing the cost structure, the operating structure, and the capital returns for the freight system so that we can make a profit. How profitable are we? Typical class 1 railroad basically takes 30% to 40% of the revenue down to the bottom line. That's pretty good business. There aren't too many businesses that can do that. Passenger services, they're lucky if they get 85% of their operating expenses covered. Sometimes they get a lot less than that covered. So they require a subsidy. So my experience is basically is not to talk to you about the benchmarking of where Americans can basically help you with the passenger services. I like to think that the best passenger services that I've ever experienced are the Swiss Railway, but I'm not supporting them here. But for freight, if you really want to modernize the Thailand railway system, you really have an opportunity, particularly if you were to convert to standard gauge, because standard gauge would allow you to handle the too high stacked container trains. How good a project has or a development has this been? Well, we took the mechanical engineering expertise, developed the double stack car, and working with our customers, we basically turned, as David said, this into a money-making machine. And in lanes like Chicago to Los Angeles or Los Angeles to New York, we took a 30% market share and drove that to 70% market share. Where did we get that 70% market share from? We took it away from the trucks. Why? Because we can carry a container at about $1 to $1.35 a mile as the charge to the customer who has all of his goods in that container. And the trucking market basically costs them somewhere between $1.75 and $2.30. Now, we can't do that everywhere. We can only do it on strategic lanes. I think that's the real key to the American business model. We started with the premise that we can't operate everywhere and beat the truck. So our strategic plan basically is that we have to figure out where we can't compete with the truck and we have to exit those markets.
Excellent.
Or we turn them over to short lines. So
Thanks, Jim.
that's my
Appreciate
pitch.
that. Excellent. Appreciate that. Joe, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening and good morning. So first, I want to make a couple of remarks that sort of tie some of this together. Okay. Dr. Bichette talked about wanting to and needing to run a safe, reliable, sustainable, smart railway. All right. And in order to do that, we need to know what our infrastructure, what its condition is, and how it degrades. And what we've done in the US, we've gone through several phases of axle load increases, speed increases, and what I'm going to talk about transfers to freight and passenger as well. If you're going to increase speed, you're going to increase load, you're going to increase density by increasing the frequency of trains. We want to minimize our life cycle cost. We want to get the most out of our asset. And just an interesting fact is that we've gone from 1.2 billion gross tons of life on a rail to over 2 billion gross tons. And how do we do that? Certainly you can purchase premium components at a premium price. It's not always the best solution, right? Premium components did allow us to increase the life of certain assets. But what we did was we instituted new maintenance processes based on emerging failure mechanisms. So as Jim and David pointed out, double stack trains, they posed their own types of damage issues and derailment issues that we had to overcome. And so when we started developing these maintenance processes for rail, say in the 70s, we instituted rail grinding. Why? Because that shifted the failure mode from fatigue to wear. And so we maximized the life of that component. We instituted friction management and lubrication that also allowed us to increase that asset. So I was very excited to see Dr. A's presentation at the very end. You're purchasing track recording cars. And the comments I want to make about that are, we did a lot of this through data. And so while you have these track recording cars and these other cars that are collecting other pieces of data about various components of the track structure and their condition, the very first thing we do is we apply a threshold, right? And we say, if it's over a certain threshold, it's a safety issue. That is reactive maintenance. But this data can be used, and all of the emerging data science techniques that are now, that 20 years ago were so hard to implement because of computing power and now are easy to implement. And we're also getting more pieces of data. Now we turn this into information that allows us to build and drive better maintenance plans. Okay, so I'm excited to see that you're getting these track recording cards, and they will be the first step in maintaining a safe and reliable infrastructure. But to get a sustainable and a long range infrastructure, we need to utilize that data and emerging data science techniques.
Management tools.
I'm happy to discuss that more.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Over to you, Michael.
Good evening and good morning. My perspective comes from several decades participating in and managing the acquisition of new locomotives and propulsion technologies. The U.S. locomotive industry has been designing, manufacturing, and delivering globally locomotives for more than 75 years. The U.S. locomotive manufacturers have progressively expanded their technical success on North America to serve customer railroads on every continent in the world. As Jim Blaze and David Burns have discussed, the U.S. railroads in particular have undergone a renaissance or rebirth in the past 40 years, having once been at large risk of going out of business, to now being a vital part of America's transportation network. A major part of that success story has been the continuing evolution and improvement in U.S. locomotives to match similar developments in freight cars, track and other infrastructure, and operating practices. Newer locomotives with improved fuel efficiency to reduce your operating expenses and improve your sustainability, greater reliability to improve your customer service, and the ability to perform more work, in other words, to grow your business, while reducing operating costs, have been key parts of the U.S. rail success story. Over time, railroads around the world have often replicated or copied techniques and technologies used by U.S. railroads to improve their own operations, to reduce their operating expenses, and to improve their sustainability and profits, and to become more reliable providers of transportation to their customers. The ability of U.S. locomotives to meet railroad demands around the world can be especially demonstrated by looking at those railroads known as heavy haul railroads, particularly those transporting large volumes of minerals. Most heavy haul railroads worldwide beyond North America now use U.S. locomotives. Over the past several decades, an average of 1 out of every 20 new U.S. locomotives has been delivered to such railroads worldwide. And U.S. locomotive designs have achieved global success with customers under all geographic and climatic conditions, from sea level to more than 5,000 meters above sea level on the world's highest railway, operating in desert and tropical conditions as well as near the Arctic Circle. Even though U.S. railroads are almost entirely standard gauge, which is 1,435 millimeters between the rails, the U.S. locomotive builders have successfully designed locomotives that operate on tracks with a gauge between 914 millimeters and 1,676 millimeters. And the U.S. locomotive builders are also very skilled at designing high-performance locomotives that fit within smaller clearance limits of height and weight. Jim Blaze mentioned how U.S. railroads in particular are reducing their operating expenses. A key part of that effort has been the substitution of newer, more productive locomotives. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Michael. Excellent. So we've heard a lot about some of the success in the U.S. Freight rail sector over the last 30, 40 plus years, and some of the technologies and systems that have been used for the success of freight rail. So I guess now we'd like to turn it over to Dr. Pichette and see if you have any reaction, any comments on the presentations made by our U.S. experts. Dr. Pichette.
Thank you, everyone. Firstly, I would like to have my opinion strongly agree with Michael. In Thailand, we have the USA technology, like a locomotive from GEA. We use more than 50 years. It should be shown in the museum right now in USA, but in Thailand, it's still running. It means that this technology can serve for the long-term development and have quite excellent quality and technology. In this session, most of you all mentioned about the freight transport, in the freight railway transport. I would like to explain more you in details that in Thailand, we have the two gauge standard, narrow gauge and standard gauge. Is for sure this is a pattern we copy from Japan. Narrow gauge for freight and standard gauge for the passenger. This is the Japanese style. Because we have history, we can upgrade our middle gauge to standard gauge. It should be burn the budget, quite a lot of budget to change the grade. Then we decision to use our narrow gauge for the freight train. And the passenger, for sure, if we need more speed, it's going upgrade to the high speed train. For sure, it should be upgrade to the standard gauge. This is details. Moreover, for the axle load in Thailand right now, should be in the near future, should support for the 20 tons per axle. But if you would like to show your idea to upgrade to the 30 ton, it's quite tough to do. Then how to convey, how to make a freight transport, railway transport business in Thailand is in this condition. More condition is in Thailand is quite open for everyone to do business here. Thailand, we are the best country to easy to do business in the world. About 100% for sure is almost of the business of the freight railway transport is operated by the private sector. We use the PPP scheme and private sector who is control, manage, operate, ICD, container yard, freight station, dry port, whatever we names. But for sure, for the freight transport, freight railway business is operated by the private sector. This is what going on in Thailand. Next round, I will tell you more in detail, what is the regulation, how to exit to the market.
Excellent. No, thank you for your comments. It's I know the U.S. speakers have a lot to say in response, but let me turn over to Dr. Attapong to see if you have any initial comments or reaction to the U.S. presentations.
Yes, thank you. As my experience about the U.S. rail during the time that I studied there for 5 years, United States is one of the world's best for freight rail operation, and in particular the heavy haul operation. So you experience in utilizing heavy axle load and the very long train to haul the cargoes, which is mainly the coal, I think. And in Thailand, we focus on both passenger and freight, like Dr. Pichet already said. And we are the middle gauge railways at this time, considering the interconnection with our neighbors in the countries adjacent to ours. They also use middle gauge as well. So mainly we are expanding our middle gauge rails, except the cooperation project between Thailand and China. That is the only one meter gauge. That is the only one standard gauge passenger high-speed rail that we are constructing. But yes, I heard a lot from the US colleagues and the panelists, David Burns. He mentioned earlier about the idea of converting or building the standard gauge to handle the double stack freight containers. And actually, some consultants approached to me and discussed with me whether it is possible to build the dedicated line carry out double stack. Based on my understanding, the meter gauge track may not be efficient to handle the heavy loads from the double stack, especially when we consider the instability of the train, the vehicle movement in curve and in the gradient section, for example. So I think if we talk about the double stack, we need to think about the standard gauge that can handle my idea about this, and maybe it need to be the dedicated section.
Yeah, thank you.
And okay.
Yeah.
And I have some few more points to address that the US has the very strong knowledge base in railways, and in Thailand we still rely on the US standards like the AAR. We use it for rolling stock and like the coupler of the car, and also the track maintenance. We also consider the ARIMA standard as our practice, like the design of some of the track components. We still regard that as our guideline. So thanks to the knowledge base from the US.
Dr. Atapam, perhaps we're running a little bit short on time. We have about 10 minutes, so perhaps I could have our colleagues from the US just react quickly to some of the comments from Dr. Bichette and Dr. Atapan based on what they've said so far. And of course, we'll have more time later to discuss as well. Joe, did you have anything to add to the to respond to what was presented about some of these issues?
No, I certainly understand where they are coming from on this. I honestly think some of these are more posed towards David and Michael, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, David? Yeah, you have to unmute, David.
From what my understanding is, you allow in Thailand 50-ton gross vehicle weight highway trucks. In this country, we only allow 40 tons. And to compete against the road, the railway has to have heavy axle loads and double stack containers. And in the case of passengers, from what I understand, it's not difficult to own a car, and it's not particularly expensive. There are no prohibition like in Japan, where a large percentage of the people travel by train. You cannot own a car unless you can prove you have an off-street parking space. So my overall suggestion is you really need to look around the world and benchmark and see what you really need to be competitive. Let's have Jim Blaze ask something. Answer.
Jim?
Okay, so we looked at converting from meter gauge or Cape gauge in Africa, in Ethiopia, Nigeria, Mali, and a bunch of other countries. And here's what you really need. In order to have a modern double stack train, you basically have to assume you're going to have axle loads of 27 metric tons per axle minimum to maybe 33 metric tons, which would be 286,000 pounds. You need to have overhead clearance between the top of the rail and the top of the container has to be about 6.2 meters. Higher if in fact it's electrified with overhead catenary wire, so then you need more clearance. And your train lengths are probably going to be 2,000 to 2,500 meters. That's typical for long trains. So that's basically the physical setup. The selling setup to sell it, you're probably better off as the railroad company. You run the trains hub to hub terminal, and you subcontract with your partners to basically go out and find all the little boxes to put in the big container boxes. That's the model that seems to work here in the United States and might have a chance of working over there. That's it.
Thanks, Jim. I guess I'm curious if to a little bit one of the other points that David made regarding private sector participation that's been successful in the U.S. was about retail lines and short lines. I'm wondering for our Thai speakers, presenters, is that something that is possible potentially in the future in Thailand to have a privately operated short lines, for these branch lines? And is that something that's ever been considered? Probably, perhaps for.
I would like to share this topic. Is for sure this expertise in this area in USA is quite useful for us in Thailand. It can apply this best practice in Thailand. Right now, as I mentioned, that for the freight rail business in Thailand, about 100% operate, maintenance, and do the business by the private sector, the company doing the business by themselves. For the type of the cargo, quite different when compared with USA. In USA, in your data, most the length, the first number is coal, but in Thailand, most of them is container with contain with the consumer products, cement, LPG, petrochemical products. This is the cargo when we convey by the freight railway. And most of them operate by the operator. Right now we have the PPP Act when give the concession to the private come to operate and maintain by themselves. This is the existing regulation here in Thailand. Open the bidding, call for the concession. The winner take the concession. How many years is up to the contract by contract. 30 years, 50 years, it contract by contract. In the next year, in Thailand, we will issue the Railway Act. We apply licensing concept of the UK to allow, to issue, to apply in Thailand. That we issue for the license for the private operator come to pay for the access charge. How many years is up to the contract by contract also. 50 years, 20 years, give them the license to operate and they pay for the access charge to use the track, pay for the SRT. Driver, locomotive, wagon, container, take by themselves. It means that we trust and we believe in the PPP scheme. We believe that the private operator they can provide the excellent services to us. Our job, the public agency, just support them to make sure that they can operate in the field free, it's fair for the market. If they have something, have the problem, we in charge to supporting them. This is the concept in Thailand. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any reaction? David, did you have a question? It looked like you might have.
I would say that that's a very good statement. And if they're interested in going to the UK licensing approach, there's a lot of hope here. But particularly American companies being interested in participating.
Excellent. Michael, wanted to give you a chance. Did you have any reaction to what our Thai colleagues have said so far?
Well, I think there's great opportunity to look at the successes as well as the issues that have arisen around the world in trying to improve railroad productivity, and particularly in terms of increasing axle loads. I look back at the early 1970s when heavy haul, for example, was first starting, largely in Australia. And there was a lot of trial and error to a large extent. And in some cases, loads were increased beyond the point at which the rail, for example, could sustain the stresses. But ultimately, many of these problems have been overcome. But the key is that those of you in Thailand are not alone in trying to improve the productivity of your railroads. Many other railroads around the world have been where you are and where you hope to go. And I think it's key that you network with railroads around the world to look for the best practices.
Agreed.
No, thank you very much, Michael. It appears we've actually run out of time, but again, this is only the first conversation, and I'm sure we can continue the conversation during the reverse train mission, and then also beyond that. So thank you very much for everyone for your participation. And again, there are advanced materials that several of the presenters on the US side also have put forward, and those are available if anyone wants to see those. So with that, I would like to thank everyone very much, and we look forward to closing this out with, and I'll turn this over now to Kevin Tours again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you again to the US and Thai panelists for their contributions to the discussion. This has been a really great conversation, and as Doug mentioned, this is only the start of that conversation. I would also share that Dr. Attapone has kindly offered to help answer any questions from the audience in writing that were not answered during today's session. To close our session today, I am pleased to introduce Ms. Verinda Fike, USTDA's Regional Director for the Indo-Pacific. In her role at USTDA, Ms. Fike leads the agency's strategy, infrastructure project preparation activities, and innovative public-private partnerships throughout the Indo-Pacific region. Verinda, we welcome you to provide your closing remarks to today's session.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And on behalf of the U.S. Trade and Development Agency, really thank all of you who have attended to make this time for this really robust discussion on opportunities across the full spectrum of the rail development throughout Thailand. It was really incredible to hear all of the developments taking place and to hear from our U.S. experts on ways that we might be able to collaborate with our Thai partners. It's an exciting time to have this conversation, and as many of you heard, this is just the beginning of bigger things to come. And so we really look forward to hosting a Thai delegation to the United States as soon as it is safe to do so. I would like to give a special thanks to the representatives from the Ministry of Transport and State Railway of Thailand, as well as all of the U.S. expert speakers for your participation. A special thank you to Deputy Permanent Secretary Sorapong Paitunpong, We agree with you that we should not wait another 9 years to hold a roundtable like this, as we clearly have so much to discuss, and we hope to engage with you more frequently. Thank you, Dr. Pachet from the Department of Rail Transport, as well as Dr. Atapan, for your willingness to answer questions that we were not able to get to, and for sharing your insights from SRT. We, from the US, certainly applaud Thailand's rail sector development plans discussed at this session, and especially Thailand's efforts to make the transportation system safer, more cost efficient, as well as more environmentally friendly. And we look forward to hearing more about the US solutions that might be able to help our Thai partners achieve those goals. As we have mentioned, we do hope that this is a precursor for the reverse trade mission and the delegation that we intend to bring to the United States in the near future. I invite any interested US firms or organizations who might be interested in meeting with the delegation to please contact our fantastic representative here tonight from Kevin Tours, from USTDA Kevin Tours, as well as anyone from the Tuatara Group, who's our logistical contractor undertaking this, this webinar, as well as the future reverse trade mission. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We want the visit to be worthwhile, both for you as well as for the Thai delegation. This now concludes our presentation. So again, I want to send a huge thank you to our Thai partners, as well as our US experts for staying up late to participate in this webinar. Thank you all for being here, and we look forward to future conversations on this really important topic. Khap kun ka, and have a good day to our Thai partners. Thank you.